I just want to share a few items. My name is Karen Esterl. My pronouns are she, her, and I will be the service leader today. As long as we are meeting remotely via Zoom, before we begin the service, we'll run through some basic instructions and rules of etiquette. We will read them every week to be sure to be inclusive of visitors, people who have not previously been able to join us, and or the forgetful among us. We will also be pasting each of these items in the chat. This is going to be my first time doing this live, so my hope is that this will work well. If it doesn't, please just be patient with me. All right. Please note that this service is being both live streamed and recorded. Anything you say will therefore be publicly available online. Please keep yourself on mute unless you are talking. Otherwise, everyone else will likely be subjected to distracting background noises. If you are connected online, note that you can use the chat function to write messages to everyone or a particular participant. You can click on the drop-down arrow to choose someone if you want to chat them directly. I will, at various points in the service, try to read relevant comments in the chat out loud so that people who are connected only by audio are included. I'm relying on Otter and Carolyn to help me to notice if there's any chat items that I need to raise up while I'm leading. If the speaker or service leader is sharing their screen, we will try to make sure that we describe what we are showing for the sake of those who are connected only by audio, as well as those who may have glitchy video connections or are unable to see for other reasons. We will talk later about how to use the participants feature if you're online, but for now, I want to note that you can click on participants to relay messages like go slower, go faster, etc. Make sure that you always identify yourself whenever you speak. Although people who are online will likely be able to see your name and possibly even face if you're sharing video or photo, there may be people who are participating by phone who may not recognize your voice. I will note that I'm not going to introduce myself every time I speak, given that I'm going to be talking a lot, but I'm hopeful that others will introduce themselves when sharing announcements, joys, and sorrows, etc. When a person is recognized to speak, it may take them a second to unmute. Please be patient. If you are connecting online, do what you can to maximize your network bandwidth. Bandwidth refers to your internet connection's capacity to transmit data in a given amount of time. We have posted some tips to lessen the likelihood of a choppy or distorted connection. I'm posting them in the chat right now, and they're also available on decorahuu.org. Because different people have different connection speeds, it's not a great idea for us to try to do collective readings or congregational songs with everyone's microphones on. So we're going to encourage everyone to remain on mute for such readings or songs, but we still hope that everyone will participate from home as they like or from wherever you are. If you are sharing your video, try not to sit directly in front of or beside a bright light source. Otherwise, everyone else will see a bright light and a shadowy figure. And if you're sharing your video, be mindful of your background. Make sure that you are okay with everyone else on the call seeing what's there. My spouse Ellis was telling me about a recent call they were on with folks, and one of the participants had nude photos hanging on the wall, which could be okay, and it could be bad. So just remember that we're live streaming and we're recording. To make the most of your viewing experience, if you are participating by video, you may wish to enter full screen mode. To do so, click on the icon in the upper right that looks like 4 arrows pointing outward. If you're on a PC, you can also press Alt and F for full at the same time to enter full screen. Please note that today's bulletin is available on our website, decorahuu.org. We will also paste portions of the bulletin in the chat window. And finally, we are still working out how best to use Zoom, so please have patience and a sense of humor as we move forward. Now that we've addressed these Zoom housekeeping items, let's proceed to the service. Good morning and welcome to Decorah UU. We are a welcoming, lay-led spiritual community moving together in time in an open search for truth and meaning. We believe in people's inherent capacity to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment, pursuing the good of humanity. If you are visiting us today, we welcome you. Please note that you can complete the form at decorahuu.org/contact-us to receive our weekly electronic newsletter or to learn more about our congregation. You can learn more about Unitarian Universalism at uua.org. Before we continue with today's service, I want to acknowledge the role that Lali Madriguera has played in it. She had approached me with the idea of asking our speaker, Melissa Koch, to come and share, and she had been the original service leader for the service when it was supposed to happen in February, but the service was delayed due to weather. Lali has graciously allowed me to manage leading the service in Zoom since I'm more familiar with the tool, but this service would not have happened without her. And, you know, maybe now that we're learning Zoom, thanks to COVID, if we ever have wintry delays in the future, we could even possibly meet virtually. Find out. In countries such as New Zealand, Australia, and Canada, and among tribal nations in the US, it is commonplace, even policy, to open events and gatherings by acknowledging the traditional indigenous inhabitants of that land. Acknowledgement is a critical public intervention, a necessary step toward honoring Native communities and enacting the much larger project of decolonization and reconciliation. So we're going to try regularly incorporating land acknowledgement into our services. When I told Melissa, today's speaker, about this inclusion, she mentioned she was already planning on doing a land acknowledgement as part of her talk. So we're going to look forward to hearing that later in today's service. For the sake of those who may be joining by audio only, I will be reading the announcements printed in our bulletin, and Sue Adi is going to help me. So I'm going to do a couple of them, and then I'm going to pass it over to Sue. Please note that our Sunday service has now been set up as a recurring meeting in Zoom, so the details will be the same from week to week. They have been posted on our website, decorahuu.org. So if you ever misplace an email but happen to have internet access, remember that you can look them up there. Also, you're going to get to see me again next week as we explore equality, how COVID-19 has increased accessibility and other possibilities for transformation. As we honor Deaf History Month, which goes strangely from March 13th to April 15th, let's reflect on how our denomination can be more inclusive of the deaf and others who have hearing loss. How has COVID-19 already moved the needle toward greater accessibility, not only for the deaf, but for many others? What other possibilities for positive transformation has the coronavirus crisis brought about? I want to note that this is related to the comments that Craig Mosier made during last week's service, although I'd already been thinking about this. I'll definitely be connecting with him for inspiration. It could even be that we end up with a service series. We'll see how this goes. All right, I'm going to pass this over now to Sue to read the remaining announcements. Sue.
Thank you. I'm assuming, Karen, that you will introduce Melissa when it's her time, so I will skip that one and let you do that at that point. Our Share the Plate recipient for March and April is NAMI, Northeast Iowa National Alliance on Mental Illness, and any check can be sent to the fellowship with the name NAMI written in the memo, or you could send it directly, I imagine, too. As we continue to find our way toward a new normal, please remember, if you need help, let us know. There are many ways that this could occur. Perhaps you need a prescription picked up, you need some groceries, whatever the case might be. And on that note, I'll mention that our UU circles, which were something that we did in the past, are going to be reinstated, and we're going to come up with some small groups that will enable all of us to stay in contact with a smaller group and perhaps break up that largeness that sometimes can be a problem. The Decorah Community Food Pantry remains open, and if you have been following that, you might have noted that a wonderful volunteer, Steve Zittergrun, a Good Shepherd member, took it on to replace the elder volunteers who are supposed to be staying home with some younger ones, and they are packaging groceries for folks to come in. So that is still open. And I think that's pretty much what we have. If you see anything else, Karen, let me know.
So I think the only other thing is that Beth Wahlberg is going to be looking to put together some guidance for using Zoom coming soon to a screen near you. So that's it. Thanks. If you are joining, let me say this first. I'm about to ask if anybody else has an announcement to share, but first let me tell you how this will work. If you are joining online, please open participants and click on raise hand. I will recognize you to speak. You can then unmute yourself, share, and indicate when you have finished speaking, and then remute yourself. And in order to lower your hand, you actually click on raise hand again. If you are unable to speak, please type what you wish to say in the chat. And after every online participant who has raised their hand has been acknowledged, I will ask if there are any audio-only participants who would like to contribute. I will allow a few seconds for people to speak before moving on. Just a reminder, this service is being both live streamed and recorded. Anything you say will therefore be publicly available online. So Ellen McDonald has her hand raised.
Thank you. I wrote this out so that I wouldn't get too wordy. Almost 2 weeks ago, while far away from home and feeling so disconnected in a time of impending crisis, I wrote Otter asking if a new email discussion group might be started for us to communicate informally with each other. The board has now discussed this and given me permission to proceed. You will be receiving an explanation soon by email. If you are a UU member, you will be included in the first mailing, but you may opt out immediately or anytime you wish. If you are a friend of UU, you will be welcome to opt in. This is not the same as the circles. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who has an announcement to share? I'm not seeing any hands raised in participants. So I'll also ask our audio only folks if any of y'all have something to say. If so, please just identify yourself by your name and then proceed to share the announcement. Okay, I think we're done with announcements. I want to note that today's service is related to our 7th UU principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. All right, y'all, we're gonna try something exciting here. I am spotlighting the chalice. I think that people see it because I see reactions in video, so this is very fun for me. Okay, great. Thank you, Carolyn, for making this happen. Carolyn Corbin will be lighting the chalice. Please remain muted, but read the chalice lighting along with me at home. I'm pasting it in the chat right now. Each morning, we must hold out the chalice of our being to receive, to carry, and give back. All right, so we will keep that chalice lit for the entire service, and we will come back to it when it comes time to extinguish the chalice. But as you scroll through participants, if you're online, you can always take a look at it. Our opening song will be I Wish That I Could Show You, with words by Hafiz, adapted by Barbara McAfee. We'll be listening to an arrangement featuring the singer Lisa G. Littlebird with Solomon Yu on the piano. Please remain on mute while we sing along. I'm gonna paste the lyrics in the chat and I'm gonna share my screen and the music in just a moment.
that I could show you. I wish that I could show you whenever you're lonely or walking in the dark. I wish that I could show you. I wish that I could show you the astonishing light of your being. I wish that I could show you. I wish that I could show you whenever you're lonely or walking in the dark. I wish that I could show you. I wish that I could show you the astonishing light of your being. I wish that I could show you. I wish that I could show you whenever you're lonely or walking in the dark. I wish that I could show you. I wish that I could show you the astonishing light of your being.
I will now share a reading of the poem Lost by David Wagner. I'm realizing I wrote all these notes to myself and I'm ignoring my own notes. So I'm going to share my screen again and I'm going to stop my video again. One moment. Lost by David Wagner. Stand still. The trees ahead and bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as a powerful stranger, must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes. Listen, it answers. I have made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again, saying, here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or a bush does is lost on you, you are surely lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. This is the time in our service when we invite anyone who wishes to do so to share with us a personal joy, concern, or milestone in your life. Again, please use the raise hand feature in participants if you're joining online. If you are unable to speak, please type what you wish to say in the chat. I will be sure to give audio-only participants an opportunity to speak too. Once more, please remember that this is being live streamed and recorded. All right, Craig.
Unmute, okay. I would just like to lift up Frances Gertz, who is a member of our community here and is the first person at Prairie Hill Co-housing to show symptoms. So our thoughts are with him. Check.
Thank you, Craig. Just a reminder, you can click on raise hand to lower your hand after you have finished speaking. And I'm looking to see if there are any other hands raised. And by that, I mean, I'm looking in participants. I'm not looking at people's videos because there are lots of videos to see right now. I'm not seeing any other hands in participants. Is there anybody? Oh, Otter.
I want to light a candle, a virtual candle or a real one, anything, for Carrie and Mark. Mark just was laid off from his work, and so that puts him and their family in the position that a lot of people are finding themselves right now. So for Carrie and Mark.
Thank you, Otter. Bill and Kathy? Make sure they're...
I'm thinking about all of the nurses and doctors and healthcare workers throughout this country every day, heartbroken for the dilemma that they have to be helping other people but being exposing themselves. It's tragic, and so heartfelt wishes and love to all those people that are trying to save us.
Thank you. Sue?
I would like to raise up and honor my daughter-in-law who is working in Chicago, in North Chicago, in the Evanston area, working with homeless people who are really having trouble in this time. And she's been working day and night, and I worry not only about her and all the contacts she has, but all these people who now have found homes in hotels. They have come up with some wonderful arrangements for them, and I'm very proud of her. But I also worry about her and all the contact that she has. So here's to Nia.
Nia. Ellen McDonald, that is.
Thank you. I have a happy story of a healthcare provider, and that is my daughter, Rachel. One of her very closest friends and a roommate from college, Allie Altschuler, is a nurse in New York City, and it was very scary. About a week ago, she was developing symptoms, and now it appears that the test she had really was 2 weeks ago, and she's had some kind of vague lung problems, but she seems to be one of the lucky ones who got it early and mildly, and now can go back to work with, at least we hope, some assurance that she won't get worse.
Shirley.
Lighting a candle for my daughter Ruth Ann, who's going to move to Rochester this coming Saturday and begin her job at the Mayo Clinic. So that's for Ruth Ann. Thanks.
Ellen Rockney.
Yes, I would just like to add thoughts for my sister, who is an RN in Colorado Springs, working in intensive care with COVID patients. And she said in her years of nursing, this is the first time that she has gone to work afraid. So for Mary Kay Bromer, Rockney Bromer.
All right, there are a few folks with their hands still raised, but they've already spoken, so I'm guessing that they are finished talking, in which case they can hit raise hand again, lower their hand. I'm not seeing anybody else. Ellen Rockney, go ahead and remute yourself. You need to share some more.
No, there we go.
Thank you. All right. Not seeing any other online participants. Are there any audio only participants who have something that they would like to share? Again, please say your name and then share away. Okay. I'm going to light a virtual candle for joys or concerns or sorrows that are unspoken but that remain in our hearts and minds. Please join me for a moment of silent meditation. Please remain muted, but join me in singing the response printed in your bulletin. I'm about to paste it also in the chat. I will be playing music that Otter Dreaming recorded for the accompaniment. Give me a moment to share my screen. So Melissa Koch said she couldn't hear the music. So I'm going to try that one more time. Sorry, y'all. I know that I saw Sue singing along at home, so I had hopes, but let me try this again. So I tried to mute myself so y'all wouldn't be hearing me sing along, but apparently when I muted myself, it might have also muted some things I did not want to mute. So thank you, Melissa, for letting me know. All right. It is now the time for our offering. Even though we are meeting via Zoom, we continue to require the gracious gifts of our members and friends to support our congregation. Of course, we know too that this can be a time of financial uncertainty for folks. So if you can give, please do. If you can't, that's totally okay. If you do wish to make a donation, you may mail your check to Decorah UU, P.O. Box 382. Let me paste this in the chat. Decorah, Iowa 52101. That's P.O. Box 382. As Sue Adi noted earlier, part of our fellowship's commitment and outreach to our community is to support worthy organizations, and this month's recipient is NAMI, N-A-M-I, the National Alliance on Mental Illness of Northeast Iowa. You can visit NAMINE-Iowa.org to learn more, and I'm pasting that in the chat as well. To donate to the recipient, you can designate so on your check if you are mailing one. In honor of the ways we support our congregation and our community, we will now sing the offertory. I'm going to paste again the words in the chat. Please keep your microphones muted at home but sing along, and I will play the music that Otter Dreaming has also recorded for us. The words are in the bulletin we have shared, in the chat, and on the screen in just a moment. So I am at this point delighted to introduce our speaker, Melissa Koch. Oh, Melissa, this reminds me, there was a question that I had written to ask you before we started, and then I forgot to ask you. So I'm going to get to ask you in your introduction. So you write nonfiction books for children and their teachers. Melissa's recent publications include 3D Printing, The Revolution in Personalized Manufacturing, Forest Talk, How Trees Communicate, Gender Bias, Past, Present, and Future in Multicultural Education, 10th edition, and Teachers, Schools, and Society, 6th edition. She has also led the development of the award-winning curricula, Build IT, and is it Innovate to the Third Power?
Innovate Cubed.
Innovate Cubed. Okay, cool. Melissa will share Joy Harjo's poem Speaking Tree with us and then move immediately into her presentation. Melissa.
Thank you very much. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and just do the share screen thing because I'm not sharing the poem, but we can go ahead and look at the PowerPoint. And let's see here. There we go. Okay, so yes, this is a poem by our poet laureate right now, Joy Harjo. Speaking Tree. I had a beautiful dream. I was dancing with a tree. Some things on this earth are unspeakable. Genealogy of the broken, a shy wind threading leaves after a massacre, or the smell of coffee and no one there. Some humans say trees are not sentient beings, but they do not understand poetry. Nor can they hear the singing of trees when they are fed by wind or water music, or hear their cries of anguish when they are broken and bereft. Now I'm a woman longing to be a tree, planted in a moist, dark earth between sunrise and sunset. I cannot walk through all realms. I carry a yearning I cannot bear alone in the dark. What shall I do with all this heartache? The deepest rooted dream of a tree is to walk, even just a little ways, from the place next to the doorway to the edge of the river of life and drink. I have heard trees talking long after sun has gone down. Imagine what it would be like to dance close together in this land of water and knowledge, to drink deep what is undrinkable. So good morning, and thank you for inviting me to join you this morning. I'm very appreciative that in this time of social distancing, we are able to use technology to bring us together, and that we are apart physically today, but we recognize our interconnectedness. Today, technology, a tool that we often blame for driving us apart, brings us together to appreciate that interconnectedness. So I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge all those who came here before us. We acknowledge that the land on which we now seek refuge was home to many indigenous people. We recognize and give thanks for the Iowa, the Sac, the Fox, the Dakota, the Winnebago, and the Ho-Chunk people, who are not only part of the history of this place, but also its present and future. We recognize all the indigenous people and immigrants who have lived on this land in Winneshank County, Northeast Iowa, and the town of Decorah. We welcome all the races and ethnicities of those who have come to this land before us, those who are with us now, and those who will join us in the future. We appreciate the home and nourishment that this land has given all of us. We have much to learn about our past, this land and its indigenous people, in order to create a future where all people and the land can thrive. So today, this morning, I want to share with you how our lives, actually all life, is interconnected with trees. So Karen mentioned Forest Talk. I will read a few sections from my book, Forest Talk, How Trees Communicate, but I'll also read from other nonfiction narratives and poems. So this isn't a typical book talk. Instead, I'd like to share a journey of the spirit with you this morning. Ideally, we'd be out in the forest or under a large oak tree for this talk. Probably not the best strategy for a reliable Zoom connection. And the weather outside isn't the greatest either. So I'm here in my home office and have a blank wall because I'm hoping you will enjoy the pictures that I put up in the slides. So instead of an outdoor experience, I have pictures to help you recall the trees and forests in your own life. Recall the sights, the smells, the sounds, and feel of the forest while we're together today. The value of just a few pictures of trees will become clear in a moment. For those who are joining us with audio only, please imagine your favorite forest, then walk through it as I talk. So as we start, Anton Chekhov, a Russian philosopher and writer, said life on Earth is inconceivable without trees. All life, every living thing needs trees to exist or they do not exist. Earth itself is dependent on trees. So as I said, I'm going to read a few things on my little notes in here. And typically I do this with kids, but I think we'll do it. We connect with trees every day. How? Think of all the things made from trees that you use today. Let's start with breakfast, since many of us just enjoyed that. Did the fruit you ate or the fruit juice you drank come from a tree? Did you eat any almonds, walnuts, or pecans? These nuts and many others come from trees. Maybe you poured some maple syrup made from the sap of a maple tree onto your pancakes. Was your breakfast spicy? Many spices such as pepper, cinnamon, and clove come from trees. The containers that held your milk and cereal were probably made of cardboard, which comes from wood pulp. Are the chair and table where you sat to eat made of wood? Is the floor of your house made of wood planks? Is the house itself built of wood? Did you read a book or newspaper while you ate? Like cardboard, almost all paper is made from wood pulp. Did you practice a musical instrument before you left or before you joined us? I say left for school in the book. Most string and wind instruments are made of wood, and that's just the breakfast list. Try making a list of all the tree products you use in a full day. Forest, and I'll read you just a few of the sections in this book about forest pharmacy. In addition to giving us food, shelter, and useful products, trees also provide us with many medicines. The air we breathe. Trees also give us oxygen, a gas that almost all living things need. Rainmakers. Trees are part of Earth's water cycle. Carbon storage experts. Trees are also part of Earth's carbon cycle. So if you go off into the far, far forest and get very quiet, you come to understand that you are connected to everything. I'm going to read. So what I'm going to share with you now in the book, what I did in the book was really to highlight some very entertaining people. And I say that because part of what Forest Talk is showing people or showing kids, and this is young adults usually from age, it varies depending on what publishers talk about, but usually kind of from 10 to like even up to 18. And to show them all the different types of people with different ideas about the world can become scientists in all sorts of different fields and doing crazy, interesting things. So the first one I'm going to read about is a guy that I met. He has a lovely British accent, so you can imagine that. And when I met him, he was actually working in Australia at the time, but he makes his home in Oregon. His name is Jeffrey Donovan. Is a researcher in the U.S. Forestry Service at the Pacific Northwest Research Station in Portland, Oregon. In 2011, he was thinking about the connection between trees and human health. At the time, this connection was well known. A number of studies had shown that tree leaves filter particulate matter, or PM for short, from the atmosphere. PM includes dust, pollen, soot, and other materials, some of which are toxic to humans and animals. The nature conservatives, I'll skip some of the details about that, but you could, if you're imagining you're a kid, you could learn a little bit about that and how people know that there are particulate matter in their air. So while particulate matter does not harm trees, it can damage human health. When people inhale particles from toxic chemicals like emissions and wood smoke, the PM can lodge in the lungs and cause cardiovascular and respiratory disease, including asthma and bronchitis. Some PM can lead to lung cancers. And so that goes on from there. Jeffrey knew that trees could help. In addition to capturing harmful material from the air, trees release beneficial chemical substances through their leaves and trunks. These airborne chemicals called phytoncides protect trees from insects and help trees fight diseases carried by bacteria and fungi. Studies have shown that inhaling these phytoncides can help human health. In humans, inhaled phytoncides increase the number and activity of white blood cells called natural killer cells. These cells kill tumors and viruses infected in cells in our bodies. So Donovan realized this. And if anything, if having trees is good for you, the opposite must also be true. Not having trees is bad for you. So Donovan kept thinking. One day while daydreaming during a meeting, he got the idea for a study. Now, actually, I wrote that the daydreaming. He wasn't daydreaming at all. He was really bored, is what he told me, because the people were talking and it was ridiculously boring. So he got this idea and it became his guiding research question. What becomes of people's health when trees die? Once he had his question, he needed to find relevant data. Donovan knew that starting in 2002, the emerald ash borer, a beetle that's smaller than a penny, had begun to infest millions of ash trees throughout North America. Adult beetles lay their egg in ash trees, larvae, hatch from the eggs, bore into the bark, and feed on tissue that transport nutrients and water to feed the trees. In this way, the larvae make it possible for a tree to get the substances it needs to live. By 2012, emerald ash borer larvae had killed more than 100 million trees. Donovan set up an experiment to find out if living in places where the ash trees had died correlated with people having poor health. He said, if I found something, it was going to be important. And he did. So what's really interesting about this is that he did. He found a correlation. And if you can imagine in your head, I don't have it in the slides because we're in a forest, but we're imagining the correlation between cardiovascular disease and lung disease. Imagine a map where all the ash borers, many of you have probably seen these maps because the type of things this community does. The correlation mapped like exactly. Those where people were increased in cardiovascular, you can find that. As it turns out, trees don't make people physically healthy. Oh, so he mapped it. And so, for example, saw that between 2000 and 2007, places with emerald ash borers infestation had 15,000 more deaths from cardiovascular heart disease and 6,000 more deaths from lower respiratory disease than places with no infestations. He noticed that the deaths of the infested ash borers followed a specific geographic pattern, and the increased cases of cardiovascular disease and lower respiratory disease followed the similar pattern. So as it turns out, trees don't just make people feel physically healthy, they also improve our spiritual being. So yes, so there's physical, so one of the things that these researchers are doing, he's doing a lot more studies, and even around children's health as well. They follow the same pattern. When you see trees dying, you see people dying. So as it turns out, trees don't just make people physically be healthier, they also improve our spiritual being. One of the first researchers to study the effects of trees on our health was Roger Ilbrook, a professor of architecture and healthcare facilities design at the University of Delaware. In 1984, he shared an important discovery. Seeing trees makes hospital patients heal more quickly and with fewer painkillers. So just seeing them, not even being out in it. So they set up a study, it was a very small study, but just seeing the trees out the window helped them heal faster than people who were looking at like a brick wall. So since Ehrlich's discovery, more research have studied the effects of trees and forests on humans' physical and mental health. In the early 1990s, the Japanese Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries coined the term Shinrin-yoku, which means forest bathing. Study shows that forest bathing, a walk in the woods, uses all the senses to take in the surroundings, alters the body's chemistry, it reduces stress and blood pressure. In 2015, research at Stanford University in California found that just a 50-minute walk in a park or forest could decrease anxiety and negative thoughts. So it's actually a good thing that right now we can get out and take a walk in the forest. The research found that a 50-minute, however, studies of inner cities in the United States show that walking among trees in a city does reduce anxiety and depression. So just even 50 minutes outside around trees can help. Now I want to introduce you to another interesting character. Her name is Nalini Nadkarni. So she found connections in the tree canopy. So most of us walk around the base of trees. So I'm going to show you two different worlds now. One is up and in the canopy, which is a whole different ecosystem than we usually experience. And then I'll show you below ground a little bit too. So Nalini found ecosystems where scientists didn't know they even existed. In June 1981, Nalini Nadkarni was right where she loved to be, climbing in the canopy of the deciduous and conifer trees in the Hoh River Valley in Olympic National Park in Washington State. This rainforest provides a home to hundreds of plants, insects, and animals. On this summer day, Nadkarni, then a graduate student at the University of Washington in Seattle, made a startling discovery. She found thick mats of roots beneath mosses growing on tree trunks and branches. Moss had no roots, and the roots Nadkarni saw weren't the roots of ferns and other plants that grow on trees. She was puzzled. She asked, "What are these roots?" Her discovery of roots in the forest canopy made the cover of Science magazine in 1981. It awakened the scientist community to the fact that the forest canopy holds unknown ecosystems. But making the discovery wasn't quite so easy and quick. So what did I say here? I was going to do 54. I think I'm just going to tell you about. So basically what happened is she found these things, and her professors didn't believe her. So she actually cut a branch, and this is in the book, cut a branch out and drug it into this into her teacher's office to prove that these were there. She was not believed for quite a while, and it took a lot of research. She went around to like hundreds of trees to make sure it wasn't just this one tree that happened to have them. And she did a lot of searching. So she actually does a lot of work in speaking with communities. She's done a lot of work with prisons. She does a lot of outreach into getting people to understand these ecosystems that exist up in trees. She's been a leader in this field for decades. So one of those communities that Nalini speaks with frequently is religious communities. Seems odd, but she believes that the more diverse communities she can reach, the more people will care about trees. So I've talked with her about this work and then watched some of her sermons online. She likes to look at, really uncover the words. For example, the word spirit or spiritus means breath. As we well know, our breath and trees are intimately connected. Nalini also wanted to know how trees are referred to in religious texts. So she downloaded the Bible and counted the references to trees and forests. There are 328 references to trees or forests in the Bible, in case you were curious. She then went through the spiritual texts of many religions and categorized how trees are referred to in each. She distilled the information to 6 categories. No, I'm not going to go through each one. I think it's interesting, you know, it's very much a researcher approach to this idea. And I think it's interesting, but I'm just going to share one that I thought it was kind of stuck out for me. Trees are connected to truth and enlightenment. The Old English word for tree is trial, is the same as the word for true, which is triale. But what truth? We'll need to look below the surface, dig a little bit deeper to uncover that truth. So here's an image of, looks like broccoli, right? This is what people actually, and you can read some of these books about people who spend their life up in the treetops. It's fascinating. They like live up there for like a year. Well, used to be north of me, but in the redwoods, they would do that kind of research. And it's just a whole different perspective. And, you know, thousands of bugs that we don't see live up there. Animals that we don't think about live up there too. So, oh, this is kind of a grainy picture, but we'll go with it for now. Actually, I might snick. Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about below ground. And this is the work of another woman who likes to get dirty, dig in the deep dirt. We just saw up in the canopy, and now we're going to talk about Susan Simard. Dig down deep into the soft, dark brown soil. It crumbles into chunks like moist chocolate cake. As the nutrient-rich soil falls away, we see the tree roots encased in what look like cobwebs. These fuzzy white threads are actually fungi. Peter Wallenberg, a German forester and author of The Hidden Life of Trees, found that a mere spoonful of soil contains many miles of fungal filaments. These filaments and the tree roots that surround have a symbiotic relationship. In this relationship, the roots give carbon from the plant to the fungi, and the fungi supply water and minerals from the soil to the roots. This relationship helps both fungi and trees grow and thrive. A symbiotic relationship, well, you know what that is. I'm not going to read that part. In a mycorrhizal network, a single trait may be physically, the The word mycorrhiza comes from two Greek words. Myco means fungus and rhiza means root. So in a mycorrhizal network, a single tree may be physically linked to hundreds of trees as well as to other plants. Forest ecologists call this network of trees the Wood Wide Web because it's similar in structure to the World Wide Web. In cyberspace, the web encompasses all the interactions between humans and the millions of network computers that make up the internet. Scientists have been looking into a mycorrhizal association since the 19th century. And I'm going to skip around a little bit. So, making a discovery. In the mid-1990s, Susan Simard, conducted experiments in the forest of British Columbia. She grew 80 trees of 3 species, a paper birch, which I think it's on the next page. So we're going to start looking at what are the connections. I have a picture here that so these trees are actually connected to each other through that mycorrhizal network I just mentioned. And here starts Susan's. She's also a graduate student at this time. So she, in the early 1990s, Susan Simard was studying for a PhD in forest sciences at Oregon State University. She learned in laboratory experiments, biologists had discovered that via mycorrhizal networks, one pine seedling root could transmit carbon to another pine. Simard wondered if this transmission could happen outside the laboratory in real forest. She had noticed that when loggers removed paper birch from a forest, Douglas fir trees in the same area often died. Simard suspected that the trees were sharing resources and information below ground through a mycorrhizal network. Not all researchers agreed with Simard. They did not believe trees were connected. Some people said she was foolish for suggesting that trees communicate with one another. Because other scientists were not convinced Simard had a good idea, she had a hard time getting funding for her research. She was unable to get money from government organizations, private foundations, and other groups that normally fund scientific research. But she persisted. She felt passionate about understanding the relationship among trees. She decided to keep doing her research despite the lack of money and the naysayers. So she devised an experiment. And on the first day of her experiment in the forest, a grizzly bear, Simard prepared syringes full of radioactive carbon-14 gas and radioactive carbon-13 gas. She would inject these gases into trees and detect their movement using a Geiger counter, an instrument that detects radiation. She borrowed the Geiger counter from her university. She bought plastic bags, duct tape, shade cloth, a timer, a white paper suit, and a respirator to cover her nose and mouth so she wouldn't breathe in any of the harmful radioactive carbon used in her experiment. On the first day of her experiment in the forest, these folks showed up. So for folks on the phone, I have a picture of a grizzly bear and a cub, her cub. So she returned the next day with no bears in sight and got started. So she put on her white paper suit, put on a respirator, and then put the plastic bag. She injected the carbons with her shade cloth. She got it all set up. She knew the fir tree would need extra carbon, and Simard wondered whether it would get some from the birch tree. Just as Simard was finishing this portion of the experiment, the mama grizzly returned. The bear chased Simard, who ran, swatting mosquitoes with one hand and holding the syringes above her head in the other hand. She made it to her truck, jumped in, and thought, this is why people do lab studies. So she sat in her truck, waiting for the bear to leave, but also waiting for the trees to absorb the extra carbon, turn it into glucose, and if her ideas about trees sharing carbon proved correct, sending it through the roots to one another. And so then what she did is she got out of her truck and she went to the birch tree. She pulled the bag off and ran the Geiger counter over its leaves. She heard a sound. The Geiger counter indicated the birch had taken up the radioactive carbon. Next, she went to the fir tree. She pulled off its bag and ran the Geiger counter over its needles. Again, she heard. This meant that the fir tree had also taken up radioactive carbon-14 gas. Simard hadn't injected the fir trees with carbon-14, so it had to come from the birch. Simard said that the sound of the Geiger counter was sort of like the sound of the birch and fir tree talking to each other. The birch was saying, hey, can I help you? And the fir was saying, yeah, can you send me some of your carbon? Because somebody threw a shade cloth over me. So I can't see the sunlight to carry out my photosynthesis, and I can't absorb carbon. Finally, she checked on a cedar tree, which she had not covered with a bag or injected with carbon gas. She ran the Geiger counter over its leaves. Silence. The cedar was in its own world. It had not taken in any of the carbon-14 gas. It was not connected to the web that linked the birch and the fir. So one more in this book. So Susan Samar describes mycorrhizal web as a complex system with hubs and networks. Hubs are trees on networks that have the most connections and send the most resources to other trees, also called nodes or mother trees. They are larger and older than the trees around them. Because they are large, they've got more carbon flowing into them from the atmosphere. They also have more roots to take up water from the soil. In other words, they have more to share with other trees. And because they have more roots, they are connected to more fungi on the network. By contrast, small trees are not linked to as many other trees. Mother trees help other trees on their network by sending them carbon, nutrients, and water. If a particular tree is undernourished or unhealthy, a mother tree will send its extra resources. Because mother trees nurture many other trees, when human loggers remove mother trees, they do harm to all the trees connected to mother trees on that network. So that's another part I want to kind of switch into is what's going on with trees and our connection. So loggers plant trees, but in most cases, they don't plant a variety of trees and letting trees regenerate themselves in order for life to thrive. They plant them in neat rows, right? So they can harvest them again. We've been logging for a long time. This is a picture from the early 1900s of logging in British Columbia, Canada. Susan Samar's family were loggers in this area. That's how she started paying attention to trees and understanding how removing huge swaths of trees hurt forests and hurt all of us. So you'll find connections. I'm going to read. Oops. When you know that trees experience pain and have memories, then you can no longer just chop them down and disrupt their lives with large machines. We know that trees are part of a wood wide web. In reality, I'm going to check my time because I hear, oh, I have run long, haven't I? Okay, I'm sorry. I have.
I've been enjoying it. I mean, the good news is that people really can't go anywhere anyway. but if people need to drop off, that's fine.
Okay. Well, there you go. We know that trees are part of a wood wide web. In reality, it's a world wide web, not the internet, but the internet connectedness of all life, all existence. In my spirit, I have felt this for a very long time. Maybe forever. I breathed a sigh of relief when I saw this idea captured in the Unitarian Universalist seventh principle. I knew I could share how I see this interconnectedness of justice, be it social or environmental, with you. In justice work, we tend to work in silos. We seek the answers within a research area, laws, disciplines, or communities of understanding that address the concerns of a specific group. We focus on the them. I believe that social and environmental justice work is a web of interconnections. There is no them, no other, only us. With that idea, there is no them, no other, only us, I want to show you a few images and read a few passages. So I should have timed this, thought of that. Okay, so the first one is from a short passage from the Heartlands, a memoir of working hard and being broke in the richest country on earth. And I'm thinking of how to make this shorter. So I am going to make it shorter. It is a really nice passage. I really recommend this book. People thinking about this issue of poverty and white privilege and not having white privilege and what that means for white poor. There's a really nice passage in here. I'm just going to read when this author sort of grew up in Kansas, poor, and she went to college. She figured out a way, was first in her family to go to college. It was a sociology course the spring of my junior year that dismantled my political views about fiscal policy. Study after study that I found in my research plainly said in hard numbers that if you are poor, you are likely to stay poor, no matter how hard you work. As I examined the graphs over and over, my heart sped up with shock and anger. On the matter of my own country's economic system, for all my family's wisdom about what something ought to cost and who was peddling a con, I had been sold a bill of goods. And this is a picture of our destruction of North America. And we used to pass this a lot in our travels in Northern California and up in Oregon. So there is no them, no other, only us. This is destruction of our rainforest, the burning of the Amazon rainforest. This quick passage, quick I promise, is from A Place to Land, Martin Luther King Jr. and the Speech That Inspired a Nation. Upstairs, alone in his suite, surrounded by rough drafts and scribbled notes on yellow legal pads, Martin Luther saw Rosa, Fanna Lou, Emmett, Medgar, the children of Birmingham, and so many others, their faces forever seared into his memory. Heroes, all chased by snarling police dogs, knocked off their feet by high-pressure water jets, arrested, beaten, shot, and hung, shocked and poked by cattle prods, their homes, schools, and churches burned and bombed. There is no them, no other, only us. Destroying forests in Brazil so we can eat meat. This reading comes from a lament by Laura and the disappeared, and trigger warning, genocide is worse than racism. I am not murdered, I am not missing, and so I will speak even to those who won't listen. I will speak because I am not murdered, I am not missing. I am one part of a thread of voices, of bodies or women standing up to speak for those who are murdered, those who are missing, those whose families are missing them. We are here to support our stolen sisters, young Native girls and Aboriginal women. Aboriginal women or Indigenous women are 5 times more likely to be violently attacked than non-Indigenous women. More than 95% of these attacks are by non-Indigenous perpetrators. Don't tell me you don't see Indians here. Your only wish is that we would silently disappear. Now, showing you images of the destruction of forests and talking about social justice is not a rank ordering of social above environmental or vice versa. Many who are focused on the environment might say we spend too much time on the social, that we think people matter more than the environment, that it is those people who are killing the environment. I believe they're one and the same. There is no them, no other, only us. If we harm the environment, we harm ourselves. If we, really? If we harm people who live, work, love, vote, or look different than us, we harm all of us. There is no them, no other, only us. Every day, we can choose a different path, a path where the mother tree reigns and all life flourishes. 2 scientists, Susan and Eleni, top of their field, were considered silly when each proposed their seminal research. Discounted, they were thought irrelevant. We frequently do this to women and to each other. Both of these women have taken a different path now that they have the power. They choose to empower all of their students and fight for the trees. For life is fragile and connected. For all of us, I wish more time amongst the trees, whether walking or in the canopy, feeling that true sense of spirit. Breathing in for self and breathing out for all of us, because there is no them, no other, just us. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Could you repeat the author of the first book from which you read?
Yes, I can hold it up too.
Okay.
Her name is Sarah Smarsh.
There we go. And then I have learned from Julie Odie that apparently phone callers may not be able to unmute themselves. So I'm gonna unmute everybody that I see that's listed by phone right now, which means we're gonna hear some sounds that we might not have heard before, but I want to make sure that I give those people the opportunity to communicate if they want to. I think I've got all of the phone only people unmuted now. Is there anybody on the phone only who would like to have the opportunity to share an announcement, joy, or sorrow? Okay, I'm going to mute you again. All right. Thank you all for joining us. Again, if you need to go, that's totally fine. If, however, you'd like to join us for our closing song, as well as extinguishing the chalice, we are about to do that. I am posting a hyperlink in the chat to the lyrics. I'm also going to be displaying them on the screen. It's "Trees Grow Slow. Please remain on mute while we sing along. And let me share my screen.
Sometimes we wonder, a worried wonder, what more can we do? In all our longing to bring healing to this land, will we last long enough to see it through? From all our giving, all our passion, all our care, when we're gone, will something good be left behind? Then we hear a voice from deep inside. Sweet, simple words come to ease our minds. Trees grow slow, and trees grow strong, and trees sway with the wind their whole lives long, and trees hold the ground as they reach for the sky, and fallen trees still feed the seeds they cast before they die. We wander to and fro, we stay a while then go, burn more holes in our boots. In all our going, what we want to know, will our souls ever put down roots? Is there a somewhere we'll know we're finally home, feeling this is the place where we belong? Then we hear a voice so clear and strong. Turn off your mind, listen to this song. Trees grow slow, and trees grow strong, and trees sway with the wind their whole lives long, and trees hold the ground as they reach for the sky, and fallen trees still feed the seeds they cast before they die. We let the fences fall, what stands between us all, and sense the veil thin. The night dark raven calls and tilts his wing and sends a bolt of wild wisdom through our skin. The winter wren is thrilling out its song, and it fills our hearts up to the brim. The whole living world just takes us in. One more time, let the song begin. Trees grow slow, and trees grow strong, and trees sway with the wind their whole feed the seeds they cast before they die.
Please join me in extinguishing the chalice, reading the text printed in the bulletin, which I am also pasting in the chat. And I will also try to highlight the chalice again. Let's see if I can find it. It may have disappeared. Oh, there, maybe. I might, oh, there we go. Okay, here we go. May the love that gives to life its beauty, the reverence that gives to life its sacredness, and the purposes that give to life its deep significance be strong within each of us and lead us into ever deepening relationships with all of life. Amen. Jean, I see that your hand is up. Just wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything that you needed to say before we conclude. Is there anything that's in the chat that I missed that we need to ensure our audio only participants get to hear?
This is Jean.
All right, hi Jean.
Hello, I just wanted to know the names of the books and the authors, please. I got the first one, but I missed the
Okay.
others. Thank you.
Sounds good. And then Melissa, after the service, will you also just email me that information? We can include it in our next.
I actually just sent, Otter asked for it privately via chat.
Okay.
And so
Great.
I'll send that out to everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jean out.
I hope that all of you have a wonderful Sunday. We are about to end this virtual gathering, but I do want to encourage folks to stay in touch with one another throughout the week until we come together again. If you are really enjoying the online service experience, please note that you could attend the Church of the Larger Fellowship, which is the online UU congregation that began decades ago, like in the 40s, as Church by Mail. They live stream a service every Sunday at 7 p.m. Central. You can visit questformeaning.org and click on worship to learn more. Thanks everybody and have a great day.